아닌가 모르겠. 날씨가 좋아서 땡땡이. 조금 늦게 오겠지 뭐 땡땡이를 하겠습니까, 그죠?
Okay, let's keep continue. Today lecture topic is from modern educational reform. Last week we were talking about some basic foundation of children and youth education. We looked at how ancient Greece and Roman and then ancient early church Christian education we looked up. That educational system in ancient Greek and Roman and early Christian that was not well organized, but they were trying to make a system working good, educational system. But modern days, there are big shift. When we talk about modern day is like the end of Renaissance. Renaissance is ending about 17th centuries, okay? After that, new era start. It is like, enlightenment period, okay? Like 개몽주의. It is because of development of science, then advance of philosophy and new ideas, new discoveries, and also advanced system of the society. That time there was industrial revolution too. Then in education field, there's also big advance we call educational reform. Also, there's a big revolution in religion, right? Martin Luther, religious revolution. Okay, here, actually, after that, we talk about this period is from 18th centuries, okay? There's a big shift, okay, about educational system. Before, traditionally, it was teacher-centered instruction. Teacher deliver the message like knowledge, and then some kind of spiritual discipline, even physical discipline was delivered to the student only in one way, okay? And then the education, the method was like, memorize and recitation, okay? Like, you guys remember, you guys in elementary, you can recall how we memorized the 구구단, right? Yeah, we memorize, we recitation. That was old, old educational method, one of the old educational method. And then the uniform curriculum. Curriculum is like, the one course is started when curriculum is like, it describes how students should be educated, okay? It describes how you teach, what kind of study material you use, and then how you can teach them. Those are described in curriculum, but it is uniform. Not many, variants, not many different curriculums. Like we teach math, there's like almost one curriculum existed, okay? That is uniform. And then corporal discipline. Corporal discipline is like, physical discipline. Like, okay, remember when you guys in elementary, okay? I was in high school, I didn't follow, okay, also I didn't do well on a test. Then teacher called my name. I go to, the podium and then show your hand, and then it did with sticks, right? Yeah, hit on my palm of hand. That was corporal discipline. Yeah. Nowadays we don't do this, right? Yeah. And then limited access. That means only some elite people can access to the education system. That was old system. Like people, ranked in, the higher in the society, they only can access to the education. Like Korea, only men can, 양반, yeah, they can read the letter, and then they can read the right? But women's totally prohibited to get educated. But it is changed when modern reform movement was started. It was emphasis on child-centered education, not teacher-centered education. It is always focused on maybe different level of educational understanding of children, and then different level of their understandings, and then even different level of cultural background. Those are all considered. So education should be, individually custom to children's learning ability. That is child-centered learning. Also, development stages. Each development is not, the educational development is not only one stage, right? You do like, you do basic, and then you do kind of intermediate, you do teach like, advanced, right? Even same grade children, they all have different stages, right? So you have to teach them in their what do you call? Based on their competencies. Competencies like the ability to master and understand, learn about some subject. The competencies like this, okay? You guys heard of young kids, they finish elementary, high school in short time, right? And then even young age, like 15 years, 14 years, they go to the college, right? Okay, that is competence. It is based on the understanding and then practicing what they learn from the school. It is competency. In Korean was 수학 능력. So now it is practiced with competency. Okay, and then also emotional and social growth is big part of education. Not only delivering the message, the knowledge to the children. And then also there are many experimental learning. Okay, for example, many children they go to field education, right? Yeah, they go to museum, zoo, or something like that. And then also education is for all social classes, not middle classes, not only for low classes and high classes. Everybody is having opportunity to get public education. Yeah, these are the big change of modern reform. Okay, let's go more. Enlightenment influences. That is also big change. Enlightenment, 개몽주의. It was done in 17th to 18th centuries. They are focused on human reason. 인간주의, 인본주의, something like that. And then in education, the individual right is more emphasized. 개인의 권리. And then natural development. And then social progress through education. That means when people get more educated, the society will be advancing to better society. That is their main focus. Okay, here, important things. You guys have to at least know their names, okay? If you are studying education, you guys heard of Jack Rousseau, okay? He is a thinker, developer of the education system in modern times. And then another educator we call Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi. Then another educator is Friedrich Vogel. Okay, he is also an important figure in modern education. He was a founder of kindergarten. Okay, and then also another important figure is John Dewey. He contributed a lot of good ideas to 20th century education. These are all included in it. Okay, another influences from the education is influenced a lot from psychology. Okay, here are psychologists Piaget. You guys heard of it? Vygotsky and Erickson. These are the most famous psychologists. They influenced a lot to the educational system. And then also, I didn't mention it here in the textbook. One of the great influencing psychologist is Sigmund Freud. Have you guys heard of Sigmund Freud? Sigmund Freud. Okay. Whether you study special education or not, any kind of social study, okay, social science like sociology, history, anthropology, psychology, education. You guys have to know this person, Sigmund Freud. Next time I'm gonna bring the material. He's a psychologist. Okay. He made big influence of his study is we human we have three different stages of mind. Okay, and then mind. Okay. Also, he mentioned that we have three different personality. Okay. Once you guys in college level, you have to know that. Okay. Let me see this picture. If you maybe you guys agree with this idea. Okay. He described Sigmund Freud. He described our mind is like iceberg. You guys know the iceberg, right? Yeah. Only tip of the iceberg is shown on the surface, right? Sea surface. But the most of the iceberg is submerged under the sea, right? Yes, this is the picture. He described three minds. Okay, remember? He described three minds. Conscious mind. Simply conscious mind is 의식. Maybe 이성. Okay? And then here, preconscious mind. Preconscious mind, another word you can say subconscious mind. Okay? In Korean words like 잠재의식. Have you guys heard of it, right? And then unconscious mind. Unconscious mind is, it is mind. You don't realize, okay, even you have conscious mind. Something in our mind we call unconscious mind. You don't realize. You don't recall it. You don't know what it is. But that affects mainly your life. So it is like conscious mind, it is of the surface of the sea level, right? So you can see conscious, 이성, reality, right? And preconscious mind. It is kind of all the experience and all the memories. Right now, you don't recognize. Sometimes you say like something like that. 나의 잠재의식이 이 일을 하게 했다. Something like that. We describe these things. It is old memory, but you can bring it back. Okay? Maybe like 10 years ago, I had a really, really bad experience in a certain restaurant, right? You had a really bad food over there. So you don't remember right now, but if you think more deeply, you can find out, oh yeah, that was experience 10 years ago. I had a really bad experience with a certain food, right? That is pre-conscious, subconscious. It's not instant memorization, but you take time to bring it, you can bring it back, right? It is long time memory. And unconscious mind, you don't know what it is. It is something like that. Let's say some babies or very young age children. Do you remember the time when you were 2 or 3 years? What you did? You don't remember, right? I don't remember mine. My experience when I was age 2 or 3 years. But something happened, something serious happened that time. My life, okay? I don't know what it is, I don't remember. But that experience exists in your unconscious mind. Let's say, when I was baby to age 2 or 3 years, I experienced, okay, my mother and father, they had a big fighting. It was a really frightening moment, right? But later when I grow up, I don't remember it. But that kind of trauma exists in your unconscious mind. So you don't know. So when you see some couple fighting each other, you become hysterical. You know what I mean? Yeah, something like this. This is unconscious mind. It is very important. Does it make sense? That makes sense, right? Yeah, Sigmund Freud studied this kind of mind. Conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious mind. And then he mentioned that, okay, mind is 3 stages, right? Conscious mind, subconscious, same as preconscious, and then unconscious mind. Also, we have 3 different personalities. You guys have heard of ego. What is your ego? Oh, my ego got hurt. Something like that. Ego. And then when we say ego, we also have to know id. Id. And then another personality, we say superego. Here in this diagram, okay, ego part is our person's rational mindset. 이성의 영역, maybe reality. Conscious mind is controlling our ego. Okay? This is just you are, Me, as what I am right now, that is ego, okay? I am talking to you. I think sometimes I do emotional think, I do rational think. That is what I am right now in reality, okay? Mostly our rational mind, 이성, control my ego, okay? Then id stays in where? Id. unconscious mind. Unconscious mind. We call like basic instincts. 본능. Okay? When I when I smell some good, food, I wanna eat it, right? My strong desire for the food, that is from it. And then what can be a super ego? Super ego. Okay, ego is staying in conscious mind and preconscious mind, right? Conscious mind, preconscious mind, you can control it, right? In real time, your mind, your emotion, you can control it. Some memories you don't remember right now, but if you can take time, you can bring it back, right? That mindset is controlling your ego, okay? Then it is what? It is your basic natural instinct that is existing in where? Unconscious mind, okay? Then super ego stays all of the area. Super ego exists in your conscious mind, preconscious mind, and unconscious mind. What is a super ego? Super ego is morality. Okay, morality is like in Korean your 도덕관념. These are all three different personality of human. That's what Sigmund Freud says. Yeah, it is totally makes sense. You don't educate it. You're not educated about your morality, right? Let's say that. But when you are very, very young age, you don't remember. Okay, you're living with your grandparents. Okay, grandparents was very strict about morality, right? You get educated from your grandfather. Grandfather said like you don't lie, you don't steal things from others, but you don't remember, right? But nowadays, super ego in unconscious mind control your morality. So you don't see, it is like you see nobody in this classroom, but you found iPhone, right? You just leave it there. You don't take it. Yeah. You're not educated even in real time, but you know that your unconscious mind says, that's not yours, don't touch it. Yes. That is morality. Yeah. Super ego. Okay? So, also children's, they are their minds and personalities are working on this idea. Okay, so you have to know that. If you know this well, you can manipulate. You can educate them well. You can read their mind and personality better. Okay? Yes, it makes sense. People have all different experiences in their life, especially when they were young. The time they don't even remember, right? Like, some children, whole life, they were living in, real severe poverty, right? Someday they don't even have 3 meals a day. It was a very, very long time, even until when they grow up, right? But their instinct, their morality, and then their ego, it control when he see, even he was not hungry, okay? When he sees food, he wanna take it. You understand, right? Yeah. That is. But some other, because it was not about he is bad, okay? Because the experience he had done it in many, many years ago. That control nowadays himself. In other words, some kid raised in wealthy family, right? Yes, they have totally different experience about the material, money. So if you know well those characters of your children, you can teach them well individually, differently. So that's why when you see the movie 내가 보지 마시노, that is very, very important. Okay, let's see some other videos. Okay, I did last week. I didn't play this well. I'm gonna play this again. It is brief history of education from the very old time.
The story of education is the story of humanity itself, for from the earliest moments when human beings began to gather around, fires carved tools and formed communities, there has been a need to pass on knowledge, skills, and wisdom to the next generation. Long before formal schools existed, education was rooted in survival. Early humans taught their children.
Before the formal school was built, education was just for what? Survival. From the prehistory, human history.
To hunt, fish, gather fruits, build shelters, and make fire. Knowledge was transmitted orally, through demonstration and imitation, and through
the knowledge was transmitted orally, because there was no, writing.
Shared stories and rituals that kept communities bonded together. In this prehistoric world, education was not separated from life. It was life itself, a continuous process of learning by doing, by observing, and by experiencing. As societies grew more complex, with the development of agriculture around 10,000 years ago, education also changed. Farming required the knowledge of seasons, soil, irrigation, and the domestication of animals. Communities began to specialize, and roles like farmer, potter, weaver, and healer emerged. With specialization came the need for apprenticeship, where children would learn a craft directly under the guidance of elders. This was the beginning of structured education, though still informal and closely tied to practical life. The earliest civilizations, Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, were also the earliest to create formal systems of education. In Mesopotamia, where writing was invented around 3200 BCE, the Sumerians established schools known as edabas or tablet houses, where boys were trained to become scribes. These scribes learned to read and write cuneiform, to perform arithmetic, and to record trade transactions, religious texts, and laws. Education was seen as the privilege of the elite, especially those destined.
You guys see the writings, right? The Egypt pyramid, there was a writing. You cannot read it, right? But like BC, BC, 30,000, no, 3,000, BC 3,000, 4,000 years ago, there was writing, started writing in Sumerian. Sumerian is like the area of the Iraq, okay, like Mesopotamian,
Served in temples or royal courts. In ancient Egypt, education was similarly centered on literacy, especially hieroglyphic and hieratic scripts, and was deeply tied to religion and government administration. Priests and scribes were among the most educated members of society, and their training ensured the continuity of religious rituals, monumental architecture, and bureaucratic organization. Meanwhile, in the Indus Valley, although fewer written records survive, archaeological evidence suggests that urban planning, standardized weights and measures, and trade required systems of knowledge transfer that must have included some form of structured education. In China, under the Shang and Zhou dynasties, education was closely tied to Confucian ideals that emphasized moral development, respect for elders, and social harmony. By the first millennium BCE, the Confucian classics became central to Chinese education, shaping the philosophy of learning for over 2,000 years. In Greece, education took on a more philosophical and civic character. The Greeks valued not only practical skills, but also intellectual cultivation, which they called paideia. Boys in Athens were taught reading, writing, arithmetic, music, poetry, and physical training, all aimed at shaping well-rounded citizens. In Sparta, however, education was militaristic, designed to produce disciplined warriors loyal to the state. Philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle profoundly influenced the concept of education, stressing dialogue, inquiry, and the pursuit of truth. Plato's Academy, founded around 387 BCE, is often regarded as the first university-like institution, while Aristotle's Lyceum further advanced systematic inquiry in science, logic, and ethics. Education in Rome was initially more practical, focused on farming, military skills, and civic duties, but as Rome expanded, it absorbed Greek educational traditions. Wealthy Roman families hired Greek tutors, and schools began to emphasize grammar, rhetoric, and philosophy, preparing young men for careers in politics and administration. The Roman education system thus combined pragmatism with intellectual training, leaving a legacy that shaped European schooling for centuries. With the rise of Christianity and later Islam, education became increasingly tied to religion. In the Middle Ages in Europe, monasteries and cathedral schools preserved classical texts and taught Latin, theology, and basic literacy. Education during this period was largely restricted to clergy and the elite, but it played a vital role in maintaining intellectual life through turbulent centuries. By the 12th and 13th centuries, the first universities emerged in Bologna, Paris, and Oxford, originally as guilds of students and teachers. These institutions taught the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, logic, and quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, astronomy, as well as theology, law, and medicine. The university model spread rapidly, laying the foundation for higher education as we know it today. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, education flourished in madrasas and centers of learning like Baghdad's House of Wisdom. Scholars such as Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Averroes studied philosophy, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, preserving and expanding upon Greek knowledge while making original contributions that influenced both the Islamic and European worlds. In China, the imperial examination system, formalized during the Tang and Song dynasties, created a highly structured meritocratic path to government service, emphasized.
You know that, right? That system was also transferred in Korea, Joseon dynasty, right? 과거 시험. Yeah.
Mastery of Confucian texts. This system lasted for over 1,000 years, making China one of the most examination-driven educational cultures in history. The Renaissance in Europe revived interest in classical knowledge, arts, and sciences. Education expanded beyond theology to include humanism, with thinkers like Erasmus and Petrarch advocating for the study of literature, history, and philosophy as a means to cultivate moral and intellectual virtue. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century revolutionized education by making books more widely available and affordable, breaking the monopoly of handwritten manuscripts. This democratization of knowledge allowed ideas to spread rapidly, fueling the Reformation, the scientific revolution, and the Enlightenment. Martin Luther's call for literacy so that individuals could read the Bible in their own languages accelerated the spread of.
Yeah, this is very also important. Martin Luther, the number one reason there should be a religious revelation, it is because of printing machine. He can print the translated Bible easily. Was not writing, okay? Writing copy is taking too much time, right? So in invention of printing machine, he can copy Bible translated easily. So it spread out, all of the Europe. Yeah, that was the big reason of revolution of religion.
Across Protestant Europe. In the 17th and 18th centuries, philosophers such as John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau emphasized education as a means to shape human nature and society, while Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Diderot promoted reason, science, and secular learning. This intellectual ferment laid the groundwork for modern systems of public education. The Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries transformed education in profound ways. Rapid urbanization and the need for literate and disciplined workers led governments to expand schooling. Mass education systems emerged, with compulsory primary education becoming standard in many countries by the late 19th century. Schools emphasized reading, writing, arithmetic, punctuality, and obedience, reflecting the needs of industrial society. Meanwhile, universities expanded to include scientific and technical disciplines essential to industrial progress. The 19th century also saw the rise of new educational philosophies. Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi, Friedrich Froebel, and Maria Montessori emphasized child-centered learning, play, and the development of the whole person. Horace Mann in the
So modern days, it was studied for teachers to teach children based on children-centered teaching method was studied at this time.
States championed free public schooling as a foundation for democracy. Women's education, long neglected, began to gain momentum, with pioneers like Mary Wollstonecraft advocating for equality in institutions, opening their doors to female students. Education became increasingly tied to nation building, with schools instilling patriotism and civic identity alongside academic knowledge. In the 20th century, education became a
I think it is women's education was started, very late. I think one of the reasons is also bad influence of the Bible. Bible says even women cannot, talk in the church. They always follow their, husband's order. Yeah. So always woman's voice cannot be raised. Okay. That is because the history in Europe went through the Middle Age, right? The Dark Age. Yeah. That time the Catholic was, prevailing all of the world. Only the popes and then people who serve in the Catholic Church, they have authority and the power, and then the power was transmitted to people who are in same group. Okay, especially woman was totally excluded from that system. Yeah, that's why the woman's education was since end of the Middle Age, there was Renaissance, right? Renaissance is like 인본주의. Yeah. So that time, people think, and the new system developed, and then new discovery in science, new philosophy arose. So people start to think differently, and then start to act differently. So that was influence of the for women to get educated.
universal right. Following the devastation of two world wars, governments and international organizations recognized education as essential for peace, progress, and equality. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 affirmed the right to education for all. In many countries, secondary education became mandatory and higher education expanded dramatically. New teaching methods emphasized creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving rather than rote memorization. Psychological theory.
Nowadays, whether if it has good quality of education or not, the secondary education is mandatory for all children in all over the world, right? Like even poor, well underdeveloped country like in Africa, kids, if they want, they can study until high school, freely, right? In public school. Yeah. That was, widespread in early 20th century.
By Jean Piaget, Lev Vygotsky, and later Howard Gardner influenced classroom practices, focusing on stages of development, social learning, and multiple intelligences. The rise of technology also transformed education. Radio and television brought educational programs into homes, while computers in the late 20th century opened new possibilities for learning. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the internet revolutionized education further, making information instantly accessible and giving rise to online courses, distance learning, and massive open online courses, MOOCs. Education has become more globalized, with international collaboration, student exchanges, and online communities breaking down geographic barriers.
Yes, actually, for me, I ran an online school many years ago. Okay, during the pandemic, with technology of computer and online, our school students were from Africa, India, Nepal, Korea, Japan, and Cambodia. Yeah. So those students studied in real time with using, you guys know that Zoom, right? Zoom online. Yeah, we studied.
Yet education has never been without challenges. Access remains unequal, with millions of children worldwide still lacking basic schooling. Debates continue.
Okay. Still, there are millions of children. Even the most country, they have system of public education. Okay, but they can do it. They can study in public school, right? But most of children, they don't do it because of the too much poverty. Yeah. If you go to school, who's gonna make your life survive? You don't eat. You have to dig into trash, right? To have food. Even those sin was we know that in many other underdeveloped countries. And even, okay, you guys heard of many years ago, there are many refugees from Middle East, right? Yeah, okay, like for example, the Syrian, there was civil war, okay? Syria was right next to Iraq, and then like Israel, right? There were big civil war in Syria. So many refugees escaped that country, travel to where? Europe, right? They have education system, but in the long way of traveling, how can you get educated? So also many refugee children, they don't have access to get education. That was a big problem of nowadays. Even, okay, this is a different story. Okay, some Middle East refugees, the family, they have children, okay? The children, firstly, they stay in, the first country they stay is Turkey, okay? There are many refugees in Turkey. They stay there many years. To finally, they want to go to other countries like France, German, and Norway, somewhere like that, right? To go there, they need to get approval, refugee approval. Yeah. Once they have it, they can travel to another country. But it takes long time. So during that waiting time, they cannot get education well. Also, I ran. Also, you guys know that the what is it? The Afghanistan, right? The U.S. lost Afghan war finally, right? So also there were many escapes from Afghan. Then I think 3 years ago, when I was running online school, it is really emotional experience. Okay, it was a summer school, okay, summer online school. One of my students was from Afghanistan. The student was girl. Okay, first day she was crying because publicly in Afghanistan, still the girls are not allowed to get education. So she was like doing like this, hiding in his home, in her home. The volume of, maybe she was using earphone, and then with low voice, she was getting educated. Yeah. It was really, really, heart touching moment. She was crying. She was so thankful to have education. Yeah, nowadays still many children, they don't get access to have education. It is so sad.
Over what should be taught, how it should be taught, and who should control education. In many countries, issues of equity, inclusion, and relevance dominate the discourse, as educators seek to prepare students not only for jobs, but for citizenship, personal growth, and participation in a rapidly changing world. The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 highlighted both the potential and the limitations of digital education. While online platforms allowed many students to continue learning, the digital divide exposed inequalities in access to technology and internet connectivity. At the same time, the crisis underscored the resilience and creativity of teachers and students adapting to unprecedented circumstances. Looking at the long arc of history, the story of education is one of expansion and transformation. What began as the simple passing of survival skills has evolved into a global enterprise involving millions of institutions and billions of learners.
Okay. There was a video from history of education. Okay. We just saw history of education, and before that we were talking about little bit of theory about our mind and ego, right? So the idea, the most common idea of education is based on the psychologist Sigmund Freud. Okay, and then there are many other educators who made theories about education. Okay, so briefly we're gonna watch this video too. Okay. Okay, theorists in education. Sigmund, we have many, but this guy is
Sigmund Freud. Freud's theories can be applied in teaching and learning. If teachers teach with the awareness of functioning of id, ego, and superego, they will understand the functioning of their psyche and see and understand, to some extent, why students behave the way they do. In this video, we present...
Yeah, if you study this, you understand why certain students have certain behavior, and you can find why. Yes.
Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, who was a Jewish-German psychologist, medical doctor, and influential thinker of the early 20th century. Freud's work and theories are associated with a set of psychological theories and therapeutic methods known as psychoanalysis. Please...
Yeah. His theory is, mostly comes into this, word psychoanalysis. Analysis is like what is analyzed, right? You see deeply, the detail of our mind and psyche.
Subscribe to Teaching and Learning Central before we begin, though. Once you've done that, please leave a comment if there's anything else you'd like to know about Sigmund Freud. Let's get started now. What is Freud's psychosexual stage theory? Freud.
Okay, he does not only study on psychoanalytic, okay? He has many different, ideas he studied too, okay? One of his greatest work is also psychosexual stage theory, okay? So this is another part of, psychology, okay? He studied our mindset, ego, conscious mind, right? And then another part he studied was psychosexual stage theory.
Suppose that personality development in childhood takes place during 5 psychosexual stages, which are the oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stages. During each stage, sexual energy, or libido, is expressed in different ways and through different parts of the body. What, according to Freud, is the Oedipus complex? The Oedipus complex is a theory of Sigmund Freud and occurs during the phallic stage of psychosexual development. It involves a boy, aged between 3 and 6, becoming unconsciously sexually attracted to his mother and hostile towards his father, who he views as a rival. What is Freud's theory of the id, and what is ego and superego? According to Freud's psychoanalytic theory, the id is the primitive and instinctual part of the mind that contains sexual and aggressive drives and hidden memories. The superego operates as a moral conscience, and the ego is the realistic part that mediates between the desires of the id and the superego. Defense mechanisms in Freud's psychology. What are they? Defense mechanisms are a way for the mind to cope with stress or difficult feelings. They are unconscious mechanisms, which means that a person uses them without realizing it. How did he interpret dreams? According to Freud,
okay, it is like you don't know. You feel like something dangerous, right? You don't know what it is, but your unconscious mind says, get away from that, get away from that. Yeah. He studied that part too. Yeah. He also studied dreams.
dreams represent fulfillments of unconscious wishes and desires that the conscious mind has censored because they are socially taboo or threaten the integrity of the self. One technique of Freud is now commonly known as the talking cure. Freud got his patients to relax and encourage them to talk freely and uninhibitedly about whatever came to their minds, which is known as free association. He believed that in such a relaxed state, these free associations would eventually lead them to access material that would allow him to discern the unconscious forces lying behind this material. Well, that's a wrap on this video. We hope you found it informational, and if you did, make sure to press the like button and show some love by sharing this video. Be sure to...
Okay. In a counseling course, you're gonna learn this more detailedly about many other psychologists, including Sigmund Freud. Okay, let's go. Continue. Okay, reform modern thinkers. Okay, first, Jacques Rousseau. He was made work was in 1762. His idea was about children's natural good. Children are all naturally good. It is like, you guys know the 성악설, 성선설, something like that, right? But he says children are all good. And he says he's emphasizing on education should follow natural development. Okay, also he has idea of avoiding forceful adult reasoning onto children's. Like forcefully teaching your children. 이거 해, 저거 해, 이게 맞으니까 이게 맞는 거야. Something like this. Yeah, he doesn't want to do that. And learning should match development readiness. Yes, every children has different level of understanding, right? So he has to accustom the way they teach to the children. And then his contribution was Russell introduced concept of developmentally appropriate education. It was shaping psychology and pedagogy. Pedagogy is like the method of teaching. Okay, in Korean words like 교육학, something like that. So there are many different ways of methods of teaching. So Russo gave idea of developing psychology, children's psychology and pedagogies, children education. But some critics says he has too much emphasis on natural goodness. No, some people says, Russo says all children are good, but some people say no, children are also bad. Yeah, he put too much emphasis on goodness of children. And then minimize the role of discipline and moral accountability. Yes. Limited theological framework. Okay, another, let me see, I think I have a video of Russo. Okay, so. Okay, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he has idea.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau's philosophy of education is based on the idea that children should develop a strong, virtuous character, the ability to reason, and a refined sense of sentiment. This is so that, as adults, they are able to resist temptations, think for themselves, and learn to appreciate the finer things in life. To explain his ideas, Rousseau wrote Emile, or On Education. The book tells the story of a boy who goes through childhood, boyhood, pre-adolescence, adolescence, and adulthood. All 5 stages happen under the guardianship of his parents and a tutor. Stage 1, early childhood, begins with Emile's birth. During this stage, it is essential for his parents to ensure that Emile develops physically. Only the mother should feed the boy, because she naturally loves him more than anyone else. To allow the boy to make experiences with all his senses, he wears loose clothing and is placed in a large cradle where he can move freely. Rousseau, who was influenced by John Locke, believed that dressing children too warmly makes them weak. If Emile doesn't want to eat,
Some other educators think if you raise your children in a good environment, eventually that makes weak your children. It's like, 원실. You know what I mean, right? Yeah. Sometimes the education should be done in a hard way too. I mean, not to breaking down of their mentality and physical. Sometimes, good stress make them have good education too.
he's supported. If he wants to use his left hand, he can. Beating or shouting at the boy should be avoided. When Emile cries, which Rousseau called our first language, his mother should try to understand him and find the underlying cause. Since children are born essentially good, it is the responsibility of the parents to shield them from those who can influence their innocent minds. During stage 2, boyhood, Emile is educated to perfect his senses. This is important because the mind needs a wide range of trained senses to perceive information correctly and develop good judgment. Instead of recommending books, the tutor lets Emil play games and conduct natural experiments outside. The city or a school are not the right places for a child at this age. Emil learns to tell right from wrong by experiencing the consequences of his actions. Instead of actively teaching, the tutor is merely a bystander who is there to protect the boy from those who want to influence his thinking or teach him bad habits. Over time, Emil learns morality and virtue naturally. In stage 3, pre-adolescence, Emil is ready to learn how to reason. Rousseau thought that only self-directed learning led to the discipline necessary to acquire real knowledge. The tutor, therefore, trusts Emil's interests, and if the boy wants to learn history he learns. Languages are acquired naturally through conversations. Emil is also taught carpentry, a manual labor that requires creativity and intellect, which helps him to become a virtuous adult who knows the value of hard work. Doing such work also keeps Emil out of trouble and allows him to make a living in the event of a change in fortune. In stage 4, adolescence, Emil is ready for the last part of his education, sentiment. Only now is he capable of understanding complex emotions such as true compassion. Emil now becomes a loving person who learns to live with and for others. Or, as Rousseau wrote, we have made an active and thinking being. It remains for us, in order to complete the man, only to make a loving and feeling being. That is to say, to perfect reason by sentiment. The tutor now begins formal education and introduces the passionate boy to concepts such as religion. Children who learn such complex ideas earlier are unable to think about them freely and hence just recite what they have been told. Emil, whose character has grown strong enough to reason, is now permitted to mingle with people in society. In stage 5, adulthood, Emil becomes a virtuous man who can make up his own mind. He visits the city and develops a sense for the finer things in life. Thanks to his strong character, the pursuit of wealth or other temptations are none of his interest. The young man is now ready to meet Sophie, the perfect woman, his wife-to-be. Sophie, a representative of the ideal woman, is educated to be governed by her husband, while Emil, a representative of the ideal man, is educated to be self-governing. The man should be strong and active. The woman should be weak and passive, Rousseau wrote. Sophie's purpose is to please, advise, and console her husband. Once strong and active, the woman...
Okay, this idea was fresh at that time, right? It was new idea, right? New idea of education. But nowadays, most people don't want to agree with this idea, right? It says man should be strong and active. The woman should be weak and passive. Nowadays, this is totally wrong idea, right? Yeah, we are all saying I think just different talented people have. Especially woman has something special on, I'm not saying this is one of the example, right? Woman catches someone's emotion understands someone's emotion very well, right? But most of the men does not catch, emotional aspect of couples or husband and wife. The wife says something, but man doesn't catch what it is. Man is, tell me what you want. Yeah. That's the only difference, right? One of the difference. Yeah. But still, women are strong, active, right? some men are weak and passive too. Yes.
Women should be weak and passive, Rousseau wrote. Sophie's purpose is to please, advise, and console her husband.
Here also, totally different one. The woman's role is please man, make man happy. that is also totally wrong idea. But at that time, it was new and fresh idea.
Once published, Rousseau's books were widely criticized, burned, and banned. The church and state issued a warrant for Rousseau's arrest. In addition, modern women disagreed with his ideas or saw him a hypocrite. Rousseau himself sent away all 5 of his children to orphanages. Nevertheless, Emile became Rousseau's most important work and a pillar of modern education. But what are your thoughts? Do you think Emile received the ideal education to become a truly free-thinking mind? Is it right to try to protect children from society's influence? Or was Rousseau wrong about education? Tell us what you think in the comments below.
Okay. That time Rousseau's idea was giving some kind of suggestion to education, right? Especially Rousseau was the purpose of education is making man, human, good, okay, with good morality, really making really good person. Education makes people good person, okay, yeah. But the reality, you get good education, automatically you become good man? No. Yes. So that was his main idea. Then another. Then the second, John Heinrich Pestalozzi. Okay, he is also a missionary in Africa. Okay, he educated the whole children. He was emphasis on children, not only transferring knowledges. Okay, had knowledge, heard, have good spirit. Okay, hence, based on knowledge, good spirit, they need to act good. That is the idea of Pestalozzi. So he's combined intellectual, emotional, practical learning. That is head, heart, hands. That means whole children. Holistic education was emphasized by Pestalozzi. So he emphasizes the love, nurturing relationships. Education is not only transferring knowledges, disciplines. Okay? It is also making relationship. That is, I think, a good point. So education should serve also the poor and marginalized people. He emphasized, that's why he did mission in Africa. So Pestalozzi influenced holistic education model. Also, he emphasized emotional safety in learning. That there should be social responsibility in education. Yeah. The education is not only children's matter, a family's matter. The society the country, community has responsible for children's education. That makes sense, right? Yeah. So in his ministry, he applied his heart education as parallel Christian discipline model that he made. So that the values, affection, and character formation. And another, okay, I think I have another video for pastors. Let me see. Okay.
The Pestalozzi Method by James Andrews. This presentation will break down the theories of Swiss educator Johann Pestalozzi. We will establish a historical context for the development of his ideas, discuss their contributions to the evolution of the modern classroom, and finally discuss their applications and limitations. But first, let's begin with 4 themes to his method. The first was a simple but revolutionary idea that education was a right to all, and not just children of the wealthy classes. He believed educating the poor was not just the right thing to do, but that it also bettered the function of society. Pestalozzi was also a proponent of active education. His approach shifted from traditional rote memorization in crowded classrooms to one that incorporated movement activities, as well as the belief that physical exercise and the exploration of nature were an essential part of effective learning. Finally, Pestalozzi's approach stressed that children had an innate knowledge that should be developed, rather than being an empty vessel to be filled with knowledge. The teacher's role is to make sure their influence does not disturb what he called nature's march of development. Putting Pestalozzi's method in historical context is important because it's one of the older theories we will be studying. Pestalozzi lived from the mid-18th century into the early 19th century, and his method stressed treating students as individuals, which stood in contrast to the educational trends of his day.
Yeah. He was focusing individual education because every children have different background, right? Different ability to learn. Not like, factory model, like, memorize this, recitation this, nothing like this.
Of his day. It's important to note his method had a greater influence beyond his lifetime and should be seen as providing a foundation for the ideas that influenced later reform movements. He was also a big influence on later constructivist theorists, such as Montessori, Piaget, and Dewey. Looking closer at Pestalozzi's classroom style, we see a focus on the emotional security of his students. Pestalozzi looked at other schools of his day and observed that students were being made to learn in an atmosphere of fear. He sought an alternative and offered an approach that aimed to educate the head, the hands, and the heart. The head represented the development of intellect and intelligence through critical thinking. For Pestalozzi, he believed that all knowledge had its origin in a child's own experience. In this way, all 3 elements had to be connected. The hand represented learning by doing. Walks in nature and playtime were highly valued in his schools, as well as frequent interaction with peers. The heart represented emotional development, moral development, and having students be motivated.
Yes, this is very important part in education. Whether if it is in Pestalozzi idea or not, okay? This 3 part is very important. We are not just teaching children only about the knowledge, right? We teach children with rational, logical thinking, right? Understandings, we teach them. And then also we teach children critical thinking, right? If you see something, you find out, you break it down, you see more detail, you can analyze. certain, phenomenon, right? That is critical thinking. He teaches, That is a head, all about knowledge, rational, logical thinking. Then when it is more practical, when you do learn those things by action, right? It represents by a hand practice. You can learn more. Okay, let's say, you guys know that, in kindergarten, kids playing with the toys, right? You teach them 1 + 1 is 2, and kids playing, number toys, right? Yes. It is more effective, And then also he emphasizes on emotional development. It is not only development of emotional, sensitivity or emotional intellectual. He emphasizes more beyond just understanding emotion. He has, with emotion, he tried to make a connection, which is relationship. So education is also about relationship, he says.
And invested in their own education. In terms of practical application, here's an example of Pestalozzi's model being used in a modern cooperative education approach. A project where a student designs a structure or perhaps builds a model is using the head and hands. In music class, singing engages emotional connection as well as the intellectual exercise of performing correctly. Encouraging students to create abstract art engages the heart and hands. And a class maintaining a community garden and preparing a meal together would engage all 3 elements. Another element of Pestalozzi's theory was his concept of Anschauung. Anschauung is a German word that translates as sense intuition. Pestalozzi defined it as having direct, concrete experience with a word or concept. In his theory, it was essential that this be established first before an instructor tries to present it intellectually. He described this in phrases like from the simple to the complex, from the concrete to the abstract, and from the near to the far. As secondary teachers, this concept should be approached as a guiding principle rather than a hard rule, as it is probably more relevant in an early childhood or elementary context. It is logical that an elementary teacher would want a child to perhaps experience a garden rather than sit for a lecture on gardening. However, with secondary students, where abstract thinking is possible, it would be impractical to require concrete experience first. For example, in a high school history class, it is not essential that a student experiences direct democracy before the concept can be introduced. However, the lesson could be reinforced with the concrete experience of taking students on a field trip to a polling station. In closing, the most practical aspect of Pestalozzi's approach, and perhaps his greatest legacy, was how inclusive his method was. Pestalozzi is remembered for his great empathy and tireless work with lower-income children. He had an unwavering belief that all classes deserved an education. When we work in public schools and work to create lesson plans that reach all our students, we are applying the most important principle of the Pestalozzi method.
Okay. Yeah, one more time, his big influence was like, just remember head, knowledge, heart, emotion, and practice. It was, in another word, holistic education. he one more thing